Zoom recording. All right, let's do this. Okay, oh, I wanted to share. Let's see, what am I going to share? I don't know. Something. Let's try this. Yeah, that worked. Cool. Okay, well, we talked about last week where we left off previously on LA law was the topic of the idea of this interaction. We remember that this person is observing from the window. He now sees the guy wandering, and then all of a sudden, a woman is going to come into the picture shortly when we get to the next slide. But it's Be'ishon Laila. We talked about this already a little bit last week. Be'ishon Laila va'afela, the dusk evening and the dark hours of the night. And the question is like, why is that relevant? So again, we talked a little bit about it last week, but I want to add some tonight. According to Midrash Mishle, the idea here, which Shlomo's trying to get across, is that some avera, some sin, prefers twilight. What does that mean? Darkness doesn't create evil. I want you to just think for a second. Put away evil for a second. Think about something that may have happened. God forbid a person gets injured, or there's a very bad storm and it looks like there could be a leak in your house, God forbid, whatever it might be, and it's nighttime. So it's scarier. I don't care if you're scared of the dark, not scared of the dark. It's different at night when the dawn rises. They say that light is the greatest disinfectant, and it changes things. The same thing a person might go through. If any of you have ever been, whether you're watching now or watching later, that have ever been to the hospital, there's a huge difference between having, God forbid, an emergency at 10 o'clock at night versus 10 o'clock in the morning. And the darkness makes difference. So it's not that the darkness causes or creates evil, but what it does is twilight, it's not just the literal meaning, but the metaphorical meaning also. It blurs distinctions. Remember, we talked about the idea of it's neither here nor there. I will tell you, and I think I mentioned this last week, that my vision specifically at twilight is quite poor. It's very hard for me to see clearly. Then not just me, I know people in general, it can be harder. Um, Things lose their sharper outlines, the way you see things, and the boundaries between what's certain and uncertain become a little blurred. One of the things I mentioned last week, and I want to just mention one more time here at the beginning, has to do with something that said in the beginning of Messiah Yesharim, where he talks about the idea of people going through life blindly without any direction whatsoever. He says, imagine a person's walking in the forest and you can make it, you think you see a person, it turns out to be a tree. Or you see a tree, but it turns out to be a person. You don't see things clearly in the twilight, in the dark. The physical reality of this twilight becomes the metaphor for moral life. The more light, the more brightness, the more presence of God, the less presence of potential avera. Very few people choose evil that they clearly recognize as evil. Some people are beyond. They can't help themselves. A person who's addicted to drugs, for example, a person who may be into something they shouldn't be doing, whatever it might be, they could get drawn in. We're not talking about that. What happens in general is a person enters a situation, the lines gradually become blurred, and the idea of being very certain about yourself weakens, and justifications begin. Oh, it's only this time, I'm out of town, and it's a different situation. It's not the same thing as last time. And the conscience, the little voice in your head that talks to you, somehow gets pushed further and further back. Eventually, what might have seemed impossible for this individual to do appears almost reasonable. Not just that, oh, I might do it, but it makes sense. Why not do it? And again, all these things we're talking about, I'm purposely just not putting in, filling any blank as to what these things might be, because everyone has different things in their life that they may be able to relate to. But that darkness outside that Shlomo is talking about reflects also the inner darkness, the darkness that has begun to gather. If I can use the terminology you've seen in movies and in books and in titles of books, the winds of war start to blow. The clouds start to roll in. Was that weird on Shabbat in August, getting 3 hours of heavy rain? That was so creepy and so weird. We had more rain in one spot here than anywhere else in Israel on Shabbat. We win. I know what we win. But it's strange. So a few people told me that they had woken up Shabbat afternoon and they looked at like, what's that noise? They look outside. I said, yeah, you thought you slept until Hanukkah, because that's what it felt like. But one of the more remarkable things about this pasuk is what does not happen. Look at the pasuk again, starting from here. Beneshef be'erev yom. Here, let's go back. He sees this guy, right? Over bashuk, etzel pina. He's walking in the market near her corner. She doesn't exist yet. And he starts taking steps, walking towards her house. When beneshef be'erev yom, be'ishon laila va'afela. So walking towards her house in the dusk of evening, in the dark hours of the night. What's remarkable is that she's not here yet. We're talking about her. By the way, it's a very rude thing to do when you talk about somebody. Let's say I'm talking to somebody, one of you. I'm talking about another individual sitting right there. You don't say he this or she that. That's very rude. But if they're not there, it's fine. This is what's happening here. She, in quotes, is not here yet in this pasuk. There's no conversation. There's no temptation. There's no seduction. There's no sin. There's nothing yet happening. And yet, when we read this, we almost can already start feeling a bit of anxiety. Something's about to happen. Alfred Hitchcock, I don't know if I ever quoted him, but talks about the difference between, what are the two terms? Suspense and something else. He said the difference between these two terms in movies, one is the person watching knows that when the person climbing the stairs, that there's someone waiting for them for a knife, and you're getting all feeling of a certain level of anxiety. The other is person climbing the stairs in the dark. You don't know whether or not, and the person in the movie doesn't know, in quotes, whether there's going to be someone with a knife at the top of the stairs. So these different emotions. So what's happening here is that Shlomo is painting this picture. This guy's wandering. He's going to shuk. He's walking near her corner. Then all of a sudden he's taking steps towards her house. Almost sounds perhaps like stalking, but it's not necessarily. But why is it important to understand? Why is it important to understand that we might feel, quote, anxious as we get to this couple, these psukim? Because every decision that really matters is already beginning to unfold, to start. The young man in this particular says a nar, young man, sorry, has already chosen his direction before anyone has come to speak to him, before any woman has turned to him, before anything has happened. Suddenly he's almost on autopilot going somewhere he's not supposed to go. He selected his environment. He's allowed himself to wander. He's entered where wisdom would have told him, don't go there. The encounter already itself has begun. It's going to be a process. We're going to see. We're going to see what happens. Let's take a look now at the next number of psukim. There we go. I'm going to read part of it. I'm not going through the whole thing right now. Let me see how far. I'll read about half of it. V'hinei isha likrato. A woman comes towards him. Shitzona unsurat lev. Dressed like a streetwalker with a set purpose. Omiyahi v'soraret b'veita lo yishkenu ragleha. She is bustling and restive. She is never at home. You'll see, lo yishkenu ragleha means the word mishkan. Your house, your mishkan. Her legs are not in the mishkan because she's out in the streets. Pam bachutz, pam berchovot. Sometimes outside. Sometimes she's in the city square. Veitza kol pina te'erov. And she lurks in every corner. Now, it's important, this word, we're not going to go into it, but the word le'erov is really waiting to ambush somebody. Orev, aleph, vav, resh, bet is an ambush. I'll tell you a fast story. I was teaching in my very first year of teaching. It was 1999, the first official year of teaching in the school. I was teaching Sefer Yehoshua. And in Sefer Yehoshua, early on, there's an incident of an ambush. And the kids, just before recess, I used the word, and these kids are fourth graders or fifth graders, I forgot. They didn't know what the word meant. So I started to explain, and then the bell rang. So I went over to one of the other teachers. I said, do me a favor, bring my class back in after, because usually teachers there in the States, you bring your class to recess, you bring your kids back from recess. So I said, do me a favor, bring the kids back in. I'll be a couple minutes late. I didn't even tell the teacher what I was planning on doing. So she brought the kids back in, has them sit quietly. The classroom gets completely quiet. I'm in the closet in the back of the room, and I jump out. I scream, ambush! They all jumped. I said, that's what an ambush is. You lay in wait for somebody. And I haven't thought about that story in a very long time, but here we're coming up with it now. She laid hold of him. She kisses him. She brazenly says to him, Zivchei shlamim alai. Hayom shilamti nidarai. I have brought my sacrifices today. I fulfilled my vows. Like, what in the world are you talking about, woman? We've gone from this woman who is of ill repute. She's wandering the streets, wandering the square. She's not at home. She's waiting in to do whatever she's going to do. She grabs this guy, this young man in the story. She kisses him, and then she says, "Hey, I brought some korbanot. I brought sacrifices." It just doesn't seem to add up. So we're going to stop at this in this part of the psukim. Let's talk about what's going on. Until now, we've been observers along with Shlomo. We watched this man cross the street. We watched him go to the market. We watched him pass by her corner. We watched him walking towards her house. We watched the young man approach, but nothing decisive has occurred until the two words that began this next set of psukim and pasuk yud. This is the woman appears. See, it took me hours to think of the title for this page. V'hinei isha. Literally, the word vihine is used in biblical Hebrew quite a bit. It's behold. And what does behold mean? It means like pay attention. Here we are. And so this woman appears all of a sudden. And with that appearance of her, everything seems to start to change. What changes? The pace quickens. The dialogue begins. The tension that's been building until now starts to become very immediate. So as soon as she enters the scene, I don't like to use literary terms like that, but we're going to use that anyways. When she enters the scene, things begin to occur. The story starts to unravel. It's important still to notice that Shlomo is still not primarily describing the woman. He's describing the temptation itself, not her. He doesn't say she was tall, she was pretty, she was this, she was that, how she was dressed. No, he's describing a feeling of the temptation of the woman vis-a-vis the man. Every detail of her appearance, her speech, her behavior is very carefully chosen to kind of like slowly reveal the temptation as how it starts to operate. Think about whether in your own life or in somebody you know, when they may have done something, not like this, whatever it might be, they shouldn't have done. We've all done stuff we shouldn't have done. There's this tipping point where it's up here. It's a thought process. Then there's the temptation, and there's all the other things that lead up to it. And as soon as the temptation moves into lamaisa, as they say, like into gear, it happens. Things happen a lot faster than they do when it's just in here. The story at this moment is not about an immoral encounter. It looks like it, about an immoral encounter, right? You have this prostitute, you have this young man, and he's just like inching closer and closer to her, and she grabs him, kisses him, and all these other things. What it's really about is, at this point, is a study in psychology, the art of seduction. That's what it sounds like at this point. And then it says, interestingly, shit zona unsurat lev, dressed like a streetwalker with a set purpose. By the way, the word zona does not always mean a harlot, a prostitute, or in this case, they called her a streetwalker. Comes up with that. It also, if you look again, Sefer Yehoshua, it talks about the woman to whom Yehoshua sends spies to her home. He ends up marrying this woman. Is referred to as a zona also, but she's not a zona in the terminology of a prostitute, but we had lazun also, which means to give sustenance, food. Hazan et haolam kulo, at the beginning of benching. So that is another potential. That's not what it means here. But there's almost a paradox in this last sheet, Zona and Surat Lev. Why? The first phrase refers to the idea, according to Rashi, the outward appearance of the harlot. That's a stupid word, whatever. Her clothing, her demeanor, and presentation. Before she even has said any word, she's already communicating a message. But the second part, Nutzurat Lev, Rashi says means cunning and secretive. She conceals her intentions beneath a pleasant exterior. So which is it? So Radak says that it's somebody who guards her plans, only revealing what she needs to when she needs to. I'm not even talking about physical, to let her guard down, to begin whatever is going to be happening. The Malbim says it's more of a psychological reading. He explains that her heart is guarded, not in the sense of purity, but the sense of calculation. And nothing she says is spontaneous. There's every word, every gesture, every smile, everything's been planned out. Is that how it goes in real life? Not necessarily. Um, but it's a an idea that this woman has been preparing for a very long time for this moment. This young man who's seeking something, I'm not sure exactly yet what, the vulnerability on his part, the idea of the temptation where he shouldn't go. But why is Shlomo bringing this all up? Yes, we're talking about temptation and everything else, but let's go back and think about all the prakim, all the chapters we've seen before here. What was one of the main themes in everything so far? Chokhmah, wisdom. That wisdom protects you. Wisdom is what is your guard in a sense. And when you literally let down your guard, it means that you don't use your wisdom. You have gone out of your mind in a sense. Gemara says in many places, "Ein adam chote ela im kein nichnas bo ruach shtut." Person doesn't sin unless a foolish idea comes into his head. Really? Every time you sin, your foolish idea came into your head. So let me explain to you what I think that means. Um, See if I want to get into this thing. Um, yeah, I'll just do a short concept here. What I'm thinking about because it's really a long piece. I don't want to digress. Um, we have a statement that says, "Shiviti Hashem nagdi tamid." I will set God in front of me at all times. What does that really mean? It means that when you're doing things, when you're davening, when you're walking in the street, when you go and take a shower, when you go into the movie, when you're going to learn Torah, whatever it is, always be aware of Hashem's presence. It's a muda'ut, it's an awareness of that. So let's say I'm going to sit down with another person and I end up wanting to talk Lashon Hara. It's funny, I don't make a conscious effort, but I really try my best. It sounds contradictory, but I know in my mind what I mean by that. To not talk Lashon Hara. But let's say someone comes to the house, I'm going to sit down with them. If I could actually picture in a corporeal, physical form in my head, Hashem sitting there on the couch next to that guy, and him just going like this. Sure, go ahead, tell him. Let me see what happens. Do you think I would talk Lashon Hara? I'd be shaking in my boots, right? So what it means in the Gemara, it says, only if some foolishness came into his head. It means, what's the foolishness? Forgetting that you're in the presence of Hashem. We all do. 99% of people do. It's only natural. But our goal is not to have Hashem. It would be nice to get him 100% of the time. It's not normal, not natural, but it is natural and it is normal to strive for as much awareness of Hashem being present in our lives. Not just like, oh yeah, I found the parking spot, or okay, fine, there's no tachlum today. Someone has a bris. We had this morning show by me. So whatever it might be. But even whatever, you're walking to show, you're walking to go catch a train. I did a bunch of trains and buses in the last 24 hours, quite a bit. And it just so happened that, quote unquote, just so happened that last night and today, I don't think I had to wait more than a minute for anything from a train to a bus to a train to another bus, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it was very aware of the fact. And today, this morning, I had someone's car for a few days, and I went to the mall, and it was a time of day about 11 o'clock in the morning where it's always very busy there. I figured I'll take a chance with the heck. As I pull in, I come down the first row of cars. As I'm pulling in, I see a car backing out. I stopped, and I just said out loud, "Thank you, Hashem." I didn't sing the song, but thank you, Hashem, because that's Hashem working. He says, "Okay, you need to get out. You need to get out your car ready. You need to do what you need to do." So that's cool. So So what's happening here is that all the idea of the chokhmah that's come before this particular series of prakim chapters before this, he's this young man in this na'ar that's being watched from the window. He's putting it aside. Foolishness is coming into his head. What's feeding it? He's going where he shouldn't go. He's listening to he shouldn't listen. The woman now appears. The woman is very tempting. The young man believes he's stumbled by accident into some encounter. She has been preparing for that all along. And it immediately establishes an enormous imbalance. One participant, the boy, the young man, is wandering. The other strategizing. The woman is strategizing. He's naive, and she knows exactly what she's doing. And then it says, Omiya v'soreret. It describes her. She's bustling and restless. Let's put that into highlight so you can see what we're talking about here. Okay, she's bustling and restive. Homiya and soraret. What does that mean? Mitzudat Davi explains Homiya means Mitzudat Sion, I think. Explains Homiya means noisy, restless, unable to remain settled. And that's not just a description of a personality. The Malbim sees this. Remember, all along, anytime I'm mentioning the Malbim in this parak, in this chapter, he always sees a more deeper psychological approach in this particular chapter. And trying to remember, let me just actually look real quickly for something before I shoot my mouth off. Right. Give me 1 second. 1856 till 1939. 1936. Yes, I thought I was right. Okay. The Malbim was a contemporary of Sigmund Freud. Doesn't mean they spoke to each other, but the early days, even the later days of Freud and psychoanalysis and psychology, which is just a relatively new science then, as far as I understand, was maybe had some influence on the Malbim. I don't know. Both are in the Malbim is early 1800s to late 1800s, and Freud's mid 1800s to early 1900s. Dies in 1939. So the Malbim sees something a little bit deeper here in this description of Homiya, or noisy, restless, or unable to remain settled. He said, restlessness is a defining characteristic of a life detached from wisdom. The righteous individual, he says, someone who is not a tzaddik, but someone who has his mind in the right place and is in the game, has an inner stability. A wicked person who's just looking for trouble or even is open to it requires constant stimulation. They cannot tolerate sitting still. I'm not talking about ADD and ADHD and all that, not at all. God forbid, we're not talking about that. But they cannot tolerate, the persons, the Rasha, cannot tolerate stillness because the silence forces them to confront themselves. Malbim is really looking into the soul of this type of person that if they were to spend enough time with themselves, they wouldn't like themselves. And they have to keep moving, keep doing, keep being doing other things, temptation or whatever else it might be. There's a similar comparison, I would say, to the opening prakim or chapters in Sefer Bereshit. Before creation, the whatever did exist once Hashem made creation, it said it was tohu vavo, it was chaos, it was unformed. What was one of God's first acts? To bring order and distinction. Wisdom always creates order. Folly, foolishness, stupidity, all that always produces restlessness. So the first thing Hashem does, he says, Hashem creates the world with wisdom. Starts with the idea of tohu vavohu. Why didn't you just wait? Why didn't you just create it already organized? That's a different share. We can talk about that in Parshat Bereshit if you want, in October or whenever. Yeah, it's October. And then the second adjective, soreret, is really enforces this. It's a person who refuses all boundaries. Where does it come from? What's the root of the word sur? Samach vav resh, to turn aside. Ben sorer umore. We have that also. It comes to the idea he's turning aside from what? What is she in this case turning aside from? The proper path. Throughout Sefer Mishle, there's one central metaphor. That's been the idea until now of what's called the derech, the road upon which a person walks. She, soreret, she has abandoned the road. She has turned away from the road. She too, not only like the young man, she too has thrown wisdom out the window. And therefore, because she's abandoned the road, she naturally seeks a companion who's going to do the same thing. Let's look at the next pasuk. Well, let me get back up to here on my screen. 1 second, please. One moment, please. I want to go to the words here. Beveita, where is it? Beveita. Here. Beveita lo yishkenu ragleha. It translates here, she is never at home. Uh, then it says pam bachutz, pam b'chavod, sometimes in the street, sometimes in the city square. What's that important here? On the surface, it just means she spends very little time at home. Plain pshat and plain meaning of the pasuk. But the commentators understand it to mean something much more profound. The Radak says, what does the home represent? Right? What does the home represent? So let's think about it. Unless God forbid a person has terrible home life. Most people thank God have a decent home life. Everyone has struggles, that's fine. But God, everyone has. So you have a busy day. You go out, you run around, you do things, you go on vacation, you come back. But what's the feeling? Truly, there's no place like home when you get back home. That's in the grand scheme, when a person makes aliyah, there's no place like home. On the micro level, when you come back to your house, to your dirah, to your whatever it is you live in, there's no place like home. It's a place that has stability. It has a covenant of peace, the concept of shalom bayit. And if it's not there, it's what's being striven for. I don't know how you see it. They try for it. And a sense of permanence as well. Unfortunately, not everybody has a sense of permanence in their residence, but she rejects all three of these: the stability, the covenant, the permanence. She's throwing all these out the window. And again, she is just a metaphor. The Malbim also says that throughout Tanakh, bayit not often it doesn't really just mean a building. It doesn't mean the house usually. It symbolizes a person's ordered world. To have no time at home, therefore, says the Malbim, doesn't just mean she's not in her house. It means she has no center. She doesn't have an ordered world. She's not grounded. There's no center, which contrasts with the image we saw earlier when wisdom was achoti. Remember we said that chokhmah achoti at, which we said earlier. Let's see if I have it here. Just a second. Here. More the chokhmah achoti at. Say to wisdom, you are my sister. We said, what does that mean? What does it mean? Say to wisdom that you're my sister. You understood the absolute connection. You also understood the absolute boundaries. Family, home, belonging. That was that pasuk. Now we meet the exact opposite. A figure is defined by perpetual movement. She belongs nowhere. She has detached herself from every lasting relationship. There are people, unfortunately, who somehow have managed to burn bridges throughout their lives. Just see my battery looks like it's very low. Let me see if I can squeeze a little bit more out of it before I have to move over to the couch. And it describes her again. You get this feeling. One of the things that's beautiful in Tanakh, you see it in regular literature, not just in divine, that the setting, the description of both the characters, the location, the time of day, it all has an influence on the feeling you have towards that particular thing you're reading. And here it keeps talking about, it says, she is, let's go back to the screen with these psukim. It says that she's soreret, right? She's bustling, she's restive. She doesn't stay in her house. She's sometimes in the street, sometimes in the square, sometimes in this corner, just trying to capture, to ambush somebody, right? So it's giving us this feeling that it's this pamba chutz and pamba bechovod, almost something rhythmic, saying sometimes here, sometimes there, and their repetition creates movement. So she's everywhere. Perhaps more accurately, she wants to appear everywhere. Not that she wants to be everywhere, she wants to be seen everywhere. In Hebrew, it's not used here in this pasuk. There are two words that sound similar. Lirot, means to see. Leheraot means to be seen. That's like lishmoa means to hear. Lehishama means to be heard. That's I'm not going to get into grammar right now, but lirot uleheraot, which we know also applies. Actually, there's a mitzvah that uses those two words. The mitzvah is at least dirabanan nowadays. Most people, some say there's no mitzvah like this nowadays because there is no Beit HaMikdash, but I personally believe there is at least a dirabanan. Which is called mitzvah re'iyah, that on the three Chagim, Pesach, Shavuot, Sukkot, the mitzvah to go to Har Habayit, to go. So the question is, what's the deal with it today? So today is at least to go to the old city and potentially even to the Kotel once during each one of the Chagim, if possible. For Shavuot, you have the week after Shavuot as well. But what was the mitzvah? A person brought a korban re'iyah, Reish Aleph Yud Hey, brought it, and the mitzvah was not just to see other people, but to be seen. It was really about showing up, about being present. And I cannot even begin to imagine, for those of you, I'm sure many of you have been over the years to the Birkat Kohanim during Chol HaMoed Pesach and the Chol HaMoed Sukkot. This year, by the way, it looks like you're doing it twice, on Monday and Thursday of Chol HaMoed for Sukkot. So it's an amazing feeling. It's amazing. The opposite was during Corona. We saw this nebuch. You watch on your screen, see 10, 20 Kohanim standing in an empty plaza. It was horrible. But so the Mitzvah David says, why is she changing the locations constantly? Because according to him, she's searching for victims. And the Malbim says, temptation rarely waits passively. It seeks opportunities. Now, yes, you can say that sometimes people are out there looking to be tempted. That's fine. Lehit patot. Lifatot is to tempt or to seduce. Lehit patot, it's reflexive. Hitpael, to be tempted. So yes, some people are looking for the excitement of whatever the excitement might be. Others, it finds them. But the final phrase is te'ero. She is laying wait. She's lying in an ambush. And that is a hunting language. She's not just waiting to meet some guy to grab him and give him a kiss. She is waiting to erov, right? She's waiting in an ambush style, like I explained when I jumped out of the closet at that time. The youth, the young man, sees himself as potentially being free to explore the city. He's wandering. But we now, as the readers, know very clearly that somebody has been watching the whole time, and not just we who are the fiddler on the roof, so to speak, watching from the window, but this woman has been watching too. The hunted believes himself to be a traveler, but in reality, he becomes the prey. And then comes that first physical contact. I'm going to just put this on pause. Let me take it off screen share for a moment. And I'm going to stop the video and audio for just a second. And I'm going to just move over so I can plug in. Okay. I'm very sensitive to people. I've had it where people walk around with their phones. I'm doing a video call, or it's just it's it's not good. So that's why I wanted to just turn off the video for a minute. Anyways, so what happens now is we see the first physical contact between the man and the woman, and without warning, the narrative just kind of kicks into high gear. And she grabs him. Doesn't say she hugs him. Says she grabs him and gives him a kiss. There's no hesitation on her part, and the woman takes the initiative in this case. And Midrash Mishle tells us also that abruptness, it's not like, hey, how you doing? Where are you going? You want to go get some coffee? None of that. It's like boom. And that abruptness is intentional, according to Midrash Mishle. He says that the temptation often seeks to eliminate any potential for the person to have second thoughts, to reflect, to, in others, what we've been saying, to allow their wisdom to kick in. Because if she said to him, how would you like to go to Starbucks? No, don't go to Starbucks. I don't like them anymore. Their coffee's great, but I don't like them anymore. Um, let's go to Aroma. And now it gives the time for the guy between the let's go to Aroma to the time they get to Aroma. And beyond that, to think, what am I doing? Where am I going? This isn't for me. So the abruptness, says the Midrash, is purposely done to prevent the guy from engaging the wisdom that he has that would stop him from doing such a thing. Because if he's given time to think, the conscience and it will start to wake up. So therefore, the encounter between the man and the woman, the very first physical encounter, is to overwhelm any judgment, any reflection, any idea of, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And it gives another phrase, Eza Paneha. She was brazen. She, with absolute 100% confidence, grabs him, kisses him. The Gemara tells us that brazenness is one of the characteristics associated with abandoning moral restraint. The issue is not confidence itself, it's the disappearance of healthy shame. What does that mean? So in the Torah, shame, busha, is not embarrassment only. It can be. Like, for example, we know that someone damages another person, more so than the time Beit HaMikdash. I don't know if it really applies today, but now you pay their medical bills and their lost wages and the damage and the pain and suffering, but you also pay busha. You pay whatever, if there is a way to, if there is, but to evaluate the amount of embarrassment that the person has to pay that also. So sometimes the word busha, embarrassment, just means embarrassment, but it's the soul's awareness of boundaries. That's really a really good way to consider what busha means in this case. Being aware of a person's boundaries, that beyond that is no good, and within the boundaries it's okay. When shame disappears, very little remains to restrain a person's impulse. It's impossible to talk about that topic without mentioning one individual. And man is Rabbi Manis Friedman. Some of you may have heard of him. What I didn't know until recently was that he is the brother of Avraham Fried. If you know who I'm talking about, he's a very famous, he's an author, which we'll talk about in a minute. He many hundreds and hundreds of videos, and he's very involved in the Indaba, which is in South Africa, an annual Torah festival, I guess, kind of kenes. I tried to get into it, didn't happen. But he's Avram Fried's brother. He's the father of the singer Benny Friedman, and he has 14 kids, Blian Haram, many of whom are actually Chabad Shluchim. He is a Chabadnik himself. He wrote a book. He wrote a book that's called Doesn't Anyone Blush Anymore? And it became a pretty big success pretty quickly. I think, actually, let me take a look at the thing I have here. Let me just, before I shoot my mouth again. Oh, yeah, here it is. Okay. I'm just going to read something to you. Actually, I'm going to put it up on the screen and share it. Go to Marv. Where are you? Here. Let's do screen share for just one more minute. Okay. His book is called Doesn't Anyone Blush Anymore? I just cut, this is just straight out of the computer. It's a short, provocative book about modesty, privacy, sexuality, and marriage from a Jewish perspective. I've read it years ago. Friedman's central argument is that tzniut is not primarily about hiding the body or preventing people from sinning. Rather, it is about protecting intimacy. He argues that when everything becomes public and boundaries disappear, we lose our ability to experience relationships as deep, private, and sacred. I asked for a citation. The purpose of modesty is not to hide ourselves from view. The purpose of modesty is to preserve our intimacy. I'm going to explain in my own words, Bezrat Hashem, next week. I'm going to leave this on this here for me, because there's something to be said here. I've had discussions over the years about this topic, and I wanted to share that with you before we continue in the next chapter. As I mentioned at the beginning of the class, next Sunday night, Bezrat Hashem, and I'm going to send out a flyer about this. I'm going to be speaking in Yerushalayim. Ilu Nishmat Danny Fry, Hashem Yikom Damo, was murdered 31 years ago in Michmas. So we won't have class Sunday night. Hopefully, we'll do it Monday night again. If I don't remember offhand, but I'll send out a note. Meantime, everyone, a Shavua Tov and Besor Tovot.